Wonderful. Hello, and welcome to the Amazon App Store, Amazon Maps API webinar. Let me get my screen set up here. There we go. All right. The first thing I want to let you know is that this webinar will be recorded, and if you want to go back and check on something that you missed, you can certainly do that after we post the video to the webinar. But my first question to you is, can you hear me? If you can hear me, please go ahead and click the raise hand button at the round blue button at the bottom left of your button bar there. So go ahead and do that now if you can hear me. So far, so good. It looks like a majority of you can hear me. Well, if you can't hear me, I suppose my telling you what to do doesn't really make a whole lot of sense right now. But in any case, during the course of the webinar, if you have any questions, please go ahead and write them down in the question tool in your toolbar. We currently have everybody on mute because, well, I distract easily, and they've decided that having written questions would be much better. We have some staff here with me in the office that will be looking at questions and interrupting me or feeding me those questions. But what I've asked them to do is to save most questions, if possible, until the end, where we can do a quick QA, or if we have questions that will take longer to answer, we will go ahead and answer those after we finish the recording and post those online with a link to the video. Great. So again, this will be recorded, and let's go ahead and get started. First of all, what is the Amazon Maps API? It's fairly analogous to the 1.0 version of the Google Maps API. It basically allows you to put interactive maps and custom overlays onto the Kindle Fire tablets. So I like this screenshot here because we actually get Europe twice, we get North America twice. This is an example of a map without a zoom level set, but we'll go ahead and we'll talk about that more a little bit later. What Amazon devices is this Maps API currently available for? It's currently available on the second generation and higher devices. In other words, it's available on all of our API level 15 plus devices or devices running Ice Cream Sandwich or later. Maps are currently available in all countries except China and Japan. Quick thing I want to cover is the difference between location and maps. So maps is simply displaying a location on the screen, kind of like the demo you saw. In the first part of my coding presentation, I'll go from hello world to showing just a map. And then from the map, I'll go ahead and add a location to that. And the location is basically what determines your place on a map. We'll add that location to an overlay. We'll add the overlay to the overlay stack on top of the map, and then we'll show how that renders. Geocoding is different than both of those. Geocoding takes an address and returns you a lat long so that you can map it. We will probably not be getting to that level in this webinar. So with that, if you have any questions that you want to make sure that I cover or make sure that we cover in the Q&A afterwards, please go ahead and start typing those questions in now. I want to make sure that I am responsive to what you guys need to learn. For the rest of the time today, I'll just be working through Eclipse, and I'll be starting with Hello World, and I'll be walking through instantiating the map view and one overlay. So if that works for you, we'll go ahead and get going. To set up your environment, I'm going to assume that you guys have your IDE set up already. One of the things that I'm going to do is work through Eclipse, but it's also important that you have a developer portal account set up before you start, because you need to do some work inside the developer portal. Fortunately, this is free. It doesn't cost anything to create a developer account on developer.amazon.com. So if you haven't done that now, you can certainly do that after the presentation is over. But let me show you here is the developer portal. It's my developer portal, and you can see a bunch of the applications that I've got going. I've already created an application that I want to use for maps today, and this is where we're going to start our work. So I have created this application for maps. I've filled out some general information and other metadata, but I haven't submitted any binary files yet. what I want to do to make it Maps enabled is come up here and click on the Maps link in the top tool in the top link bar. When I click on that, it's going to give me something embarrassing because I need to refresh the page. There we go. That's how you know it's a live demo, right? And once we get the maps view, you'll see that I can add a debug registration. And this is handy for what we're doing now. I've already done this, but what you would do is click on the add a debug registration, type in your package name, and then the MD5 fingerprint. If you need help getting an MD5 fingerprint, it's the debug fingerprint, and I'll show you how I get that in Eclipse. So I come over here, I open a key store. You can type in your credentials to the key store to open that up. And I don't have the key store right available, but the password for the default debug key store is Android. So I've got it down here. And you grab the MD5 fingerprint out of that and go ahead and paste it into the dev portal, and you're good to go. So once you've got your fingerprint in, it'll create a line similar to these in your application, and you'll want to make sure that you use the correct package name, because it's going to make sure that that package name syncs up with the debug code before giving maps. So I'm going to go ahead and copy com.amazon.sample.maps so that I don't mistype that. And we'll go ahead and we'll get started with a new project. So over here, we'll go ahead and we'll create a new Android application. Of course, I don't want it to be messy down there, so let me go ahead and clean that up. com.amazon.sample.maps, that's great. Minimum required SDK, we'll go ahead and make that available on our API 15 devices. You may have heard that we've recently announced some exciting new devices. Those are running Android 4.2.2, so we'll go ahead and put the correct build of Jelly Bean down there, and I'll accept the defaults for the next ones. Come on, there we go. And let it go ahead and create the standard out-of-the-box hello world for us here. Good deal. So the first thing we're going to do with our new program here is we're going to go ahead and add the maps jar. So what you want to do is back on the developer portal page, go to SDK and Tools, and make sure you download the SDK. After you have the SDK downloaded and put in a directory of your choice, you'll be able to drill down and get to the Amazon Maps library, which is what I'm going to do now. Properties, Java build path. I'm going to go ahead and add an external jar file. Fortunately, I've got this already navigated correctly, but you can see that it's part of the Amazon SDK. You go to Maps, inside Libraries, and the Amazon Maps jar file is right there. So we'll go ahead and open that. Unlike other Amazon APIs, we do not want you to click this box for order and export. Please leave that box empty. When I first started working with this API, I of course checked that box like I'd have for all the other APIs, and that was not the right thing to do. So please avoid checking that. Once you've got that done, go ahead and click OK, and now we're ready to go ahead and start editing other bits. So we'll start with the manifest. The manifest is actually fairly easy. What we need to do is we need to add a chunk here for the Amazon schemas. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this XML namespace up there for us to use. If you like, you can follow along in the documentation on the developer portal. The documentation on the developer portal can be found over here in Maps. and under building and testing, you can see upgrading the Android Manifest XML. And basically what I'm doing is you can follow along here, and it's going to be very similar. That's so that you guys can do it later when you feel like it. So now we need to add the correct permissions. Since we get the maps from the internet, we need to go ahead and add the access internet permissions. And since we want to get location, we also want to add the find and course location. For the devices, for the Kindle Fire devices that have WAN, wide area network as opposed to local area network, we get find access location through GPS. For devices that are local area network or Wi-Fi only, we'll get course location. And course location is a good thing to remember to default to if you don't have access to find location. So I've got mock location down here to help out with debugging. The next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and enable the feature for Amazon Maps. So let me go ahead and add that now. We'll do that right after the application tag. There we go, and we are done. Let me go ahead and save that and make sure that we don't have any errors. Wonderful. Now, I'm going to go ahead and edit the layout. So let's go into Resources, go into Layout, and you'll see that we've got basically our Hello World layout done. Quite frankly, we don't want the Hello World layout done, so I'm going to spare you the pain of actually watching me type all of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste a pretty standard layout here. It's a frame layout where we're going to put the maps view into a window that fills the parent window. And I've got a relative layout here in which I'm actually going to be able to put a button, a little compass button that will attach to later that will actually go ahead and find out what your location is and then plot it on a map. So I've got all of that here. Notice that I need a compass drawable. So when I save this, I should get an error because I haven't put that in yet. There we go. So I'm going to come up here to my resources. I'm going to create a new folder. Drawable. And fortunately, I have my little icon saved right down here. Oh, come back icon. There we go. So I'll just go ahead and drag that into Drawable, and that should take care of our error and give us a neat little compass that we can work with. All right. Now that we've got the layout and the manifest taken care of, it's actually time to start working on the code. Now, I'm going to run this and test it in an emulator. So the first thing we should do now is go ahead and launch the emulator. Why? Well, because if you've worked with emulators, you know it takes a little bit of time to launch. The emulator that I've got going is actually one of the really cool, faster emulators that we have using the new Amazon AVD Manager. And not only does this represent all of the new devices that we have, but it actually makes it a lot easier to configure out of the box. When your emulator comes up, it's important to know a couple of things. You need to register the device. To register the device, go to Settings, go to My Account, and make sure that you've got the device registered. Maps won't work if you don't have the device registered. So my device is registered, so I'm in good shape. Also, please go to Wireless. In Wireless, please make sure that location-based services is on. If you don't have location-based services on, things are going to get messy and you're not going to get what you want. So a lot of the problems people have working with the devices and emulators is related to those two things. They don't have location-based services enabled, and they aren't logged into the device. So we've got that taken care of. Good. And now we can start working on the code. So the first thing I want to do is add the Amazon Maps stuff to our imports. And so we've got GeoMaps. I'll just go ahead and accept that. We're good to go. There's also some Android layout stuff that I'll want to get to, sorry, not Android layout stuff, but there is Android location stuff that I'll add later just by organizing imports, and you'll see that when we get to it, and you see the little errors. So the first thing I'm going to do is extend activity. I'm going to actually extend map activity here because we're actually extending the map activity. And the first thing you'll notice is that I get an error because map activity requires that we inherit the method is route displayed. I'm rather peculiar, and I really don't like leaving errors around. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take care of that by going ahead and taking care of that route displayed. So I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and set that to false so that we can get the error taken care of. All right, now I can go ahead and set some of the variables I want to work with. So for the map view that we're going to work with first, I want to create a local variable for map view, and we'll call that why? Because we're just not being very creative today, and that looks pretty standard. So that's good. When we go ahead and do the overlays, we'll want to create some here for overlays too. We're not going to do that right now. We'll get back to that later. This is mainly just to remind me not to forget that. So the next thing I want to do at this point is go ahead and in onCreate, I want to go ahead and create a reference to the map view. So to create a reference to the map view, I'll go ahead and map view, there we go. Good deal. And after we've extracted a reference to the map view, we actually want to turn on the zoom controller. Again, it's nice having 2 copies of North America on our device when we show the map, but when we go ahead and when we do the overlays, I'm actually going to want to zoom into our location on the overlay at something more granular than the entire world. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and set the built-in zoom controls. And that's good. What argument does it take? Well, it takes true. And we're in good shape there. Wonderful. Now we've got everything we actually need to display a map view. So if everything has gone well, what I should be able to do is run this, and we'll actually be able to see the map show up in our emulator. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Bring my emulator over. Wait for a while. Hey, I love it when something happens. Excellent, and we have our map view. This is a good thing. So now that we know that we've created a map view, let's create an overlay for that. And the overlay, what it will do is it'll create a layer that we can put a location on. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add a little Find Me button up in the right-hand corner. You'll remember that we created that in our layout. So I'm going to go ahead and create that little button in the top right-hand corner, and I'm going to have that call a Find Me method. And the Find Me method is going to find the best location for where we are now. Again, since we have access to coarse and fine-grained location, we're going to want to set up that method to get the best provider for the location, and then grab our lat long from the best provider of that location. Then we're going to go ahead and feed that to a location overlay. We're going to turn the overlay on, and then we're going to add the overlay to a list of overlays that we're showing on our map. So let's see, where are we going to start? Why don't we start by going ahead and adding the button. So we'll go ahead and create. I promise I won't make you watch me type through this entire demonstration. And what did I call this? I called this Find Me. There we go. And I need to organize my imports. And I've got, let's see, that doesn't look right, does it? There we go. So let's see, find view. There we go. All right, good deal. Now we've got the button up there. I'll go ahead and I'll add the listener for the button and have it called the Find Me method, so that you don't have to suffer with my typos. I'm just going to go ahead and paste that block in. You'll note it uses an on-click listener, so I need to go ahead and I need to organize my imports again. And now that works. So we've got the on-click listener attached to the button that we put in the layout, and on click it'll run the Find Me method. Now we should, well, probably create the Find Me method. So let's go ahead and do that next. Again, because I want to save you the pain of actually watching me type through this, I'm going to go ahead and pop that in. We're using Location Manager now, so I mentioned earlier that we'd need to add this to our imports. I'll go ahead and take care of that immediately. Find Me Zoom is something that we'll use when we go ahead and create actually, why is that? We'll go ahead and we should be able to use that when we create the variable up here on our Zoom. We should have that. Oh, that's because, well, again, remember I said I was going to have to create some of the variables for overlays? Well, actually, now would be a really good time for me to do that so that we don't have those errors. So private my location overlay, and we'll call that location overlay, and we need another one for the Find Me, where we set the Find Me that we were missing below. This is final, right? Yeah, I think, yes, it's final. Oh, there we go. There we go, organize the imports to get rid of that problem. And now we should be just fine down here. Okay, excellent. Much better. So let me go back and walk through this, where we are creating a location manager object and instantiating the location service. And now we want to go ahead and get the best provider from the location manager. As I discussed earlier, we want to be able to get fine if we can get it. If not, we'll get coarse. And what we'll do is we'll create a location object. And from the location object, we're going to get the last known location from the best provider. Once we've got the best location into our location object, we'll take a look at it. If it's null, well, that'll happen if you haven't registered your map or if you have location services off. We'll let the user know that they can't get the location obtained. But assuming everything's done well, we'll go ahead and we'll get the map view, and from my location, we'll go ahead and get the lat and long from the location object. Remember, the location object is using the best provider to get the last known location. So that should get us the best lat long information we can from the device. And then we're going to use an animation to kind of zoom into my location so that you get kind of that neat magnitude, that zooming effect. And it'll zoom to the 18 that we set up at the top in our variables earlier. So now we've got the way to find me with the location manager. Now we need to actually add the views. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that here in onCreate. We need to create the first thing we need to do is create the location overlay. And we'll create overlay. We need to give this some context. That should work. And we need to we need to let it know that it's that object. Good deal. And so that actually creates the overlay. After we have the overlay, we need to go ahead and turn that overlay on. So we're going to enable my location, which is easy enough to do. And now that we've created the overlay, we've turned on the overlay, we need to add the overlay to the list of overlays that will be rendered. Fix that error, then come down here and map view, get overlays. Good deal. And we'll want to add this to the location overlay, so we'll do add. Good deal. So let's go ahead and review. From just having the map rendered, what we've done is we've added a little map icon to the top right-hand corner. We've created an overlay. We've turned on an overlay. We've added the overlays to the list of overlays that will be rendered. And we've called Find Me when the little icon is clicked. In Find Me, we call the location manager. We ask for the best provider, and we set that we create an object location with the best provider's last known location. We then check to make sure if it's not null that we can go ahead and get the lat long from that object, and then we'll go ahead and zoom to my location, which we set with a lat long at the correct zoom. So if I run this now, how does the emulator know what lat long I am? Because if I'm an emulator, really a GPS or Wi-Fi triangulation isn't going to work. So in order to tell the emulator where I am, we actually need to launch a terminal window. And in the terminal window, what we're going to do is we're going to telnet into the emulator. And the port that the emulator is on is, well, okay, mine's always there. And, oh, well, localhost. There we go. All right, that'll work. Except when I type incorrectly. Woohoo, connected to localhost. Well, that was more complicated than it needed to be. But the next part is actually pretty easy. All you need to do is geofix and then type in the lat long of the location. From having done this earlier this morning, I happen to know that Seattle is 122 and 47, 6097. So now my emulator knows where I am in Seattle, so that when I run this, excuse me, what I meant to say was when I wait for a while, go get coffee, come back and run this, I now see where I am on the overlay of this map. So that's pretty handy. I can click there and it will go ahead and give me the zoom level that I had asked for, zoom level 18, and it'll go ahead and place my location from the most accurate provider on the map as an overlay. So that's how you get the map view, and that's how you go ahead and set a lat long as an overlay onto your map. And using other services like the geocoding services, you can turn addresses into lat longs and then create as many different points on the overlay as you see fit. So I'm going to check to see if we have any questions that we want to answer right now and see if I can help clear anything up. So hold on a sec while I look at some questions here. First question that I see is related to Google Maps v2 functionality. And we don't have Google Map v2 functionality. The Maps API that we've got currently is analogous to the v1. I get that fencing is really cool, and that's pretty neat, but that's not something our API has at this point. Let me take a look at next question. Oh, yeah, okay, this question looks like it's coming up a lot, is how do you create apps that work on Google and Amazon without having to double the code base? So this is challenging because the Amazon maps aren't going to work on Google, and the Google Play Store maps don't work on Amazon. So we've had developers in the past who don't want to write the mapping implementation twice. We've had them use web views that instantiate Google Maps or Bing Maps through a web view. One of the other providers we have has used MapQuest APIs, and the MapQuest APIs were actually pretty popular for the developer I'm thinking of, because not only did they work on Google Android devices and Amazon Android devices, they also worked on BlackBerry, they worked on iOS, and they also worked on HTML5 applications. So so absolutely take a look at some of the MapQuest cross-platform map stuff if you just want to write one code base. Hold on, let me dig into some more questions here. Oh, here's a good question on migrating from Google Maps to the Amazon Maps. If you're currently using Google Maps 1 and you want to migrate or create a package using the Amazon Maps, that's actually fairly simple. On the developer portal, we actually have a really handy document on migrating from one to the other. And let me see, here we go, migrating an app from Google Maps. And that gives a fairly good step-by-step set of instructions for what you have in Google Maps and how do you get the equivalent in Amazon Maps. That's actually a good question, and it would be a good idea to maybe do a separate video on that later about migrating from Google 1.0 to Amazon Maps API. Thanks for that. Looking at some more questions here. Hold on. It's about supporting maps in China and Japan. That's a good question, and if we needed to support maps in China and Japan, I'd go again with the WebView supported maps or a global cross-platform maps API like MapQuest has. Reading more questions. It's about actually if you want to implement both map APIs, both Google Map API and the Amazon Map API in your app. One of the things that we've seen developers do successfully is do a capability detection to determine what the device is that they're running on. Some people will actually detect manufacturer on device. For all of the devices that we've launched as Kindle Fire, manufacturer equals Amazon, so that's probably fairly safe. You don't ever want to do explicit device detection for the very point that the devices we just released have brand new device IDs. So if you did do explicit device detection, you'd have to go in and monkey around with your code base again. But I think manufacturer equals Amazon is good, and they have they just had a branch that if manufacturer equaled Amazon, they'd go ahead and call a class that rendered the Amazon map. If not, they'd call a class that rendered the Google map. And then they only had one APK that they needed to keep track of. And as different maps were updated, they could just update the correct class for that. So looking for more questions here. What's the benefit of using Amazon Maps over the Google Maps API? The Google Maps 2 API is pretty cool, I'll admit that. The benefit of using the Amazon Maps API is it actually gets you a map on a Kindle Fire device. Since the Google Maps 2 API is inexorably intertwined in the Google Play Store package, we can't run that on the Kindle Fire devices. So since that won't run on the Kindle Fire or any version of Amazon that's not integrated the Google Play Store stuff, we needed to provide a Maps API for people to use, and well, that's why we have it there. Looking for more questions that I can answer. Looking. There's a question here about signing apps that I'll answer in the Q&A once we publish that. Ramesh, that's just a little bit more that I want to talk to today on the webinar. So go ahead and take a look for the answer on that a little bit later. Hold on, let me get some more questions here. Oh, here's one. Can we do geocoding of an address outside the mobile app? You actually need to use our API to get the geocoding. The benefit of that is we don't actually charge you for any of the geocoding. All of that stuff is free. Who's our mapping provider? Yeah, we use Nokia to help us with the maps on that, and particularly the geocoding. Let's see. There's a question here about how do the Amazon Maps compare to Google Maps. I think pretty much the straight up answer on that is we're analogous to Google Maps 1.0. If that doesn't answer your question, or if you'd like more details, please go ahead and type in a follow-up question. Actually, that's a good point to bring up. When I'm done with this current round of Q&A, we're going to go ahead and leave the webinar session open for 5 to 10 minutes, just to make sure that we can capture any follow-up questions you want to ask before we close down the session. So you'll definitely have a few minutes to ask me follow-up questions if I haven't answered your question the way you like. Reading more questions. ooh, can you put Amazon Maps in a fragment instead of extending an activity? You should be able to render the map view and overlay in a fragment, yes. Is there a restriction on how many geocoding calls we can make? I have not heard of any restrictions on the number of geocoding calls you can make. Please don't do that in the UI thread. Thank you very much. Here's a question about whether to make geocoding calls locally or how or when to make geocoding calls. That's tough to answer because I really don't know what your app is doing or how your app is working on operating. So again, other than keeping it off the UI thread, if you need to make the geocode calls, that's fine. Since we're not really setting a hard limit on that, you'll have to kind of figure out what's going to work best for your app on that one. Best way to do a tile overlay of custom data. I don't think there's a best way. I mean, there's a best practices or a recommended way. And one of the neat things about the SDK that you downloaded is pretty much everything that I've shown you today is included in sample apps in the SDK. So actually, let me go ahead and take you there. So in the maps part of the SDK download under samples, you'll see that there are a handful of different steps for the Capitol Hill Coffee sample code. What I've done is I've effectively done step 1 and step 2 today. What you can look at is step 3, which is a best practices example of how to add those overlay tiles. So if you want to look at the best practices for adding your own tile overlays with your own custom data, go ahead and look at the code in step 3, add coffee overlay in the sample code. I think that should give you some pretty good guidance. All right, reading some more questions. And let's see. Let's see. Hold on. There's one here. Amazon API level. Build targets for the API. If you wanted to work on the second generation and third generation, second generation Kindle Fires, the one that we've had out for the last year, it would be good to go ahead and target API level 15 as a minimum. But if you go ahead and go all the way up to API level 18 for a build target, that's just fine. You can use an API level 18 as a build target. It'll still work on the API level 15 and the API level 17 devices. So I am just about ready to wrap up. I'm afraid the other questions you've asked will need to wait until we answer it when we post the video online. But hey, thank you very much, folks, for asking some really good questions. It's really been fun, and I hope you've learned something today. I hope this has been valuable. If you like a webinar where we actually go ahead and start with Hello World and code something up like we did today, please write to us or type something in the questions in the form of feedback, letting us know that you like this format. Previous formats have been walking through slide decks with code samples, mind you, but walking through slide decks. And we want to hear from you, which you prefer. So please do type up a question so that we can capture which one you like better, and we will work to meet your requests on that one. So guys, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and sign off and go into mute, but we're going to leave the session open for a while so that you can type in your feedback and any follow-up questions or answers that you have. Thank you very much.